version of that one.
Yes. Hi there. Hi, anyone who's watching, and hi to Jim. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you are watching this and you know who Jim is, you're probably as excited as me. If not, Jim is a model maker, but I'm going to let him explain what his job means and what he does. But if you're watching and you've got a question that crops up, feel free to pop it in the dialogue box. I will be monitoring these as we go. Yeah, it's your opportunity to come and ask questions as well. So, like I say, thank you so much for joining us, Jim. My first question, I'm going to jump straight in if that's all right, is can you explain what your job is?
Yeah, I suppose it's very simplest. You could call me a professional plasticine player. So yeah, it's my job to sculpt characters that go into kind of world famous animation. So everything from Morph, Wallace and Gromit, Shaun the Sheep, Pirates, anything Aardman you can think of, I've pretty much had a hand in. Certainly since 2000, so since Chicken Run onwards, really. And yeah, and another lovely part of my job is to do outreach and travel the country, sometimes online, showing people, my skills and teaching people how to make their own characters and things like that as well. So it's a nice varied job. So, 1 minute I can be up in Scotland or even in Norway in the Arctic Circle, teaching people how to play with clay, and the next minute I'll be online or in the studio making films. So it's a good varied job.
It sounds it. Is there like an age range, or does it appeal to everybody?
I think really it's something for everyone. Well, I always say children 5 to 95 is a good remit. People, kids below 5 years old are perfectly capable of doing it. It's just having the hand strength really to push clay around that much. So I haven't really watched it, but there is a thing I've heard of, a thing called the Play-Doh disco. So if you are smaller than younger than 5, you can kind of use Play-Doh as the gateway drug to plasticine. And that will give you the hand strength and coordination to start to build and get an idea of putting shapes and things together. And that's what sculpting and model making is about, is putting shapes together to make a greater thing.
So my son actually had a question for you. He wanted to know, have you ever got really frustrated with a model where it's not gone quite right, or it's fallen apart, or anything like that?
All the time.
Does it ever go wrong?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, absolutely. I'm playing if I notice that I never made mistakes. But yeah, there are occasions when it will go wrong, and you need to rethink what you're doing. You try and plan as much of that ahead, and when you've been making models for 20 odd years, like I have, you have a good idea of where things are going to go. But materials don't always behave themselves, and we all have good days and bad days. For example, just then, I've lost the ability to speak today. So that's something of an issue. So yeah, and the great thing with modelling clay is you can always squash and start again, or make several versions and have them laid out before you, and then that means you can pick the best one out of what could be a bad bunch or the best bunch you've ever made.
So you said that you've been doing this 20 years. Were you a model maker before then?
In my professional life, I've pretty much, since I left university with a job in a small studio in Wales, and I worked for a couple of years in Wales before I joined Aardman. So my entire career, I think, started in 1998. So a long time ago now. That's why they call me a senior model maker at Aardman, because it just means I'm an old model maker. That's what it really means. And when you hit 20 years, you get your complimentary white beard and go bald. So that's the price.
Is that the women as well?
Absolutely, yeah. Beards, obviously.
So can you describe the journey? So you said you went to university. What was it you studied at university? And then how did you move to get to where you are now? What was that journey?
I mean, really, if I go back a little bit, not quite to GCSEs, but post GCSE, we had the option of doing A levels, and I wasn't very conformist. So certainly, I think a lot of schools will experience, leavers will ever experience the same thing. You look at A levels, and the artwork isn't that inspiring. I think in our course, everybody would have to draw a perspective drawing of a corridor or the quadrangle. Some maverick painted a picture of a tree frog, and that was talked about for years as being, this amazing piece of art. And I thought, that's not really what I want to do. I just didn't enjoy that. And a BTEC National in design offered me the opportunity to see exactly what I wanted to do. I always had an idea that I wanted to be an artist, whatever that is, the generic term artist, but I didn't really quite know where I wanted to go. But and originally when I was a child, I wanted to be an Ewok, but I was already too big to be an Ewok. So that was it. That was out of the way. So so I did a BTEC National, and we studied graphics and product design, and fashion and textiles, and I had a deep love of fashion and textiles. And had I been brave enough, the fact that it was 40 girls and me was too much for me to cope with. So fashion's loss is animation's gain. But since I have done the 2011-12 autumn-winter range for Polly Pocket, I've designed toy clothes for Polly Pocket. So I've exercised a little bit of that kind of that kind of want, and it was all about baker's caps and faux fur collars then. So it was an interesting thing to do. So so I studied product design and looked at toy design, actually, because a couple of my tutors had worked for Bluebird Toys, who did Polly Pocket and Mighty Max, and these amazing kind of spacecraft toys that you could get as well. And I thought, well, that seems like a really fun thing to do, working with toys. And at the same time, there was a guy called Simon English teaching film and television. And now this was in the early to mid 90s. So probably 93, 94. And he was teaching VHS cameras, so very 90s thing. But for an hour a week, after hours, he would allow any students in Mid Warwickshire College, which is where I grew up in that area, an hour of an evening on a Wednesday to come and play with cameras. And we would set the cameras out, and we did all sorts of stupid things like gaffer taping ourselves to the bonnet of our mate's mini metro and then go down an old airfield at 50 miles an hour, strapped to a metro, like high-speed cameras. I don't recommend you do that. Do time, or now, because we can do it on our phone, you can speed footage up to make yourself look like you're going really fast. Do it on a bike or something far safer. But back then, we were stupid, and health and safety wasn't really an issue. So he was also doing animation as part of the course, and taught me the very basics of animation, of making plasticine things, or even moving yourselves around, using yourself as a puppet and moving yourself around, called pixelation. And because it came up to degree time, he said, this might be something you want to think about doing, and do a degree in animation. And there are only about 5 or 6 courses in the country. Now there are hundreds out there. And one of the few ones that did stop motion was either a choice of Edinburgh or Bournemouth or Pontypridd, and rightly or wrongly, I chose Pontypridd. It wasn't the most exciting venue to do it in, but had some good tutors, and it obviously worked because I'm now 20 odd years on, and I'm working in the field. So yeah,
fantastic. So it sounds like right from the start you knew you needed to do something creative and hands-on, but you weren't. It wasn't necessarily decided that it would be the animation until it kind of was introduced to you externally.
Yeah, totally, yes. So there might be a little bit of background noise because we've just come in, and my dog's excitable, so you might hear a bit of background noise.
Well, I had mine barking this morning in another interview, so I completely understand. On that vein, so you're talking about going to university and stuff. Obviously, you learn a lot of skills from the different courses and the degree you were doing. Did you find that you had to have qualifications in order to get into animation? Do you think that's the case?
Not at all. I mean, when I joined during Ireland in 2000, I expected it to be all graduates.
Mm-hmm.
And the truth is, it honestly wasn't. Some of it was actually at the time friends of friends who got jobs who were interested in working in animation, because there weren't that many people working in the field, and Ireland needed hundreds of people. So people had come from graphic design, from costume design at the old Vic Theatre. Some people have been making curly whirlies, at the Cadbury's chocolate factory.
Yeah, I know well.
Had friends who worked in animation and thought, well, you could draw, or you could sculpt, or you could do something else, and they had those appropriate skills, or started from the very bottom of press molding shapes and learning the craft from the very bottom upwards. So and I think especially these days, I think completely don't need a degree. You can get an app. I've been doing that. There's lots of free apps out there for a phone, or for a tablet, or even your desktop computer, and anybody with a webcam or a phone can be an animator and make films and learn the craft. And that's what it is. It's all about repetition. learning the craft, is putting the hours in and playing and discovering. And I think actually it's important to keep the play as part of that as well. I've got to an age now where actually if I'm not enjoying it, I'll go and find something else to do and find another project to work on, because it's got to be fun. This animation is a long enough slog without enjoying yourself. It's an awful time, really. So yeah, it's got to be enjoyable.
Yeah. And I think that seems to be a common theme when each interview I've done now with, especially people that work in creative fields. I think every single one has said no, they didn't need any qualifications to get into their role. It was all about their portfolio and being able to evidence their skills and passion for that area. And that's how they got their foot in the door. And I think it's important for young people to hear that, because I think the system puts a lot of pressure on them to get these qualifications at this age. And then they feel like the doors are shut to them if they don't. And that's not necessarily the case.
No, I think, I've had the great privilege of through Arbon mostly, of going to places like YouTube headquarters, Google HQ in London, and seeing the amazing facilities and things they have there. But they're offering studio space and broadcast studios to 12 and 13-year-olds, 15-year-olds, 17-year-olds who have got hundreds of thousands of followers, and they're giving them studio space to create content. And you can't do a GCSE in that. That's you building a load of followers and you learning on the job and seeing what the audience wants and seeing what you like to produce. So I think I hate to say don't do a degree, but there's no pressure at all to do one, really. And I think, like I say, for animation, with a bit of plasticine, doesn't even have to be that bit of wire, moving objects around. If you can tell a good story, people will watch it and you can get a good audience. So you could make your internet fortune making Lego animations, or doing something similar to that.
That would be a pretty cool job. I know my 9-year-old certainly wants to do something like that. So what would you say is the best part of your job?
I would say it's probably the variety. And I have what you call a portfolio career. So I work in animation, but I also work in character design, some product design stuff. I used to work for Jellycat as a freelance designer, designing plush toys. I get to do talks like this. I get to travel around the country, doing outreach and doing corporate team building. I work on various animation projects with Arbon, the BBC, and in my own little studio, do a little pilot series and working out things like that. So I think it is about variety. My dog's just ripping a cardboard box.
No, it does sound like a really varied job. And again, I think for people that are creatively minded, you need that stimulus to change. You can't be too stagnant in an idea. So it makes sense.
Exactly. I mean, I applaud people who can do that. And goodness knows we need them. The doers need that repeatedly as well. Keep feeding the sausage machine. It's just that I would probably clog up the sausage machine with too much sausage, or making new interesting sausages and get sacked. So yeah,
I can relate to that. So what would you say is the worst part of your job?
I would probably say, oddly as it sounds, sometimes actually it's staying in hotels. It's working for a long day. Sometimes I can fly out or drive somewhere for 4 hours, do a whole day's work, and then sit in a not terribly glamorous hotel for a night on your own. And that's, you're away from your family and stuff. And that can be really fun. But when it's not very fun, that's quite awful. There's only so many travel lodge breakfasts you can stomach, or,
Yeah, the novelty can wear off quick.
Yeah, and also it's fairly unstable. It's down to me to find work. So, there can be feast and famine in that as well. So that's, I would say, that's probably partly the price that you pay to have that creativity, to have that that variety, is that it is not always very stable. And, I would confess that I don't always earn enough to be able to cover the poorer times. And that can be a real struggle. But that is my choice, so that's the thing. But the benefits are huge, and I get to meet lovely people and chat to people like yourself, and and that's really, really nice. That's really encouraging, and it kind of really enthuses you about what you do when you meet your audience, and you see the joy that brings to people as well.
Awesome. I've seen a question come through, so I'm going to read that out. Freya, I know her well. She asks, "What is your favourite thing that you have designed?"
Or I would say it's probably a project called Creature Comforts, I think.
I know.
It's a real favourite of mine. Kids won't know it so well, but you can find it. It's a bit like the BBC Listening Project, in that it's people recording like an audio, like a radio play or a radio interview, and then you take snippets of that and then put it together, and we reanimate them as animals, talking as humans, and that's really great. So you can find it on YouTube and find it all over the place. And I got to design quite a few different characters on that. Really loved doing an Anteater on that, was a particularly joyous one, and some wine tasting group. I did for Comforts USA. So I got to make about 20 different dog thumbs and sniffing dogs' faces for when they're sniffing out wine. Again, I'm getting grape, I'm getting nuts, I'm getting spice, and then had to make waggy bum tail, tails of bums. So that was a really good thing to do. That was a really fun time. And I did make a giant whale once as well, a 2-meter long whale by 1 meter high with a little tongue, a big tongue with a little fish that sat inside the tongue, and that animated as well. So that was quite a good challenge to make something so big and then something so small all in the same set. So that was really fun.
That sounds awesome. I watched all of those, but I'm gonna be on YouTube later, watch them all over again now. If you weren't a model maker, animator, what would you do instead, do you think?
Oh, it's very easy. There's two things. I'd either be a zookeeper, and I paid money to shovel tapir poo, measure tapir babies, and feed pygmy hippos, and do all sorts of stuff like that, mostly involving poo. And again, I suppose it would involve poo. I'd be a paleontologist, I think. So
Awesome.
I think it's all to do with biology and nature and stuff like that. I think. Yeah.
Awesome. What would you say has been the biggest challenge you've had to overcome to get to where you are now?
I think I'm actually, despite what people think, I'm actually a very shy, quite retiring, quite antisocial person. Really, my wife would definitely say that. So I think that was the thing, was probably overcoming some of the fear of, and I've made myself do difficult things because of my fear of public, being out in the public light. So I go and do talks to 800 people, and I'll go and do things that are challenging, because otherwise you can, especially with animation, it suits the loner and the person that likes to hide in the dark making things. So it's much harder to get out there and meet people and see people, and that's why I probably don't animate as much as I could do. I prefer to make the puppets because you're more social with people. And I love this side of my job of doing outreach and teaching people how to play with clay and make models, because it forces me out, and it's taken me to loads of amazing places. I've taught the royal family how to wang a welly. I've taught them how to make Shaun the Sheep. So I've taught William and Harry and Kate how to make Shaun the Sheep at the Farmers Llamas premiere. I've taught Tom Hiddleston and Eddie Redmayne how to make hobnobs. That's the pig from Early Man. I was about to say Euroman, which is a different film, not yet made. So it's taken me all sorts of weird and wonderful places, and I do get to meet famous people. And I've talked about pirates with Hugh Grant, Lady Tottington with Helena Bonham Carter, and that's super exciting to meet your kind of Hollywood heroes. Is amazing. Yeah.
It goes to show that pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone has its own rewards as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, totally. And it's that. Otherwise, I would stay at home and play Xbox or push plasticine around on my own in my bedroom, and I wouldn't see anybody. So I think doing that forces me out to be a bit more gregarious, and that's got to be a good thing, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Freya's asked another question. She said, "How long does it take to make a standard clay creature?" Good question.
Very good question, Freya. The answer is anything from an hour to a couple of weeks.
Oh wow!
So morph, we're expected to work at a rate of 8 NPD, which is 8 morphs per day. So you make lots of them in 8 in a day, and it's about 1 hour. And again, the same with the wear-rabbit bunnies, you have to do 8 NPD, BPD. So it's all about that, the kind of very simple little plasticine characters. But then the ones that you would think were quite standard, like a Shaun the Sheep, can take Once you've made the art, which takes about 3 days, you then have to cover it in fleece, and then cast legs and sand them and prime them, and then stiffen the fleece, and that takes, it's probably a week's work to make a Shaun the Sheep. So quite a lengthy process, and the setup for that takes months. So the first one might take several months, and then you're molding it and you're casting and you're creating clones, and it becomes quicker as you go on. But it's like a very small amount of time to a very large amount of time is the truth.
Yeah. Cool. So for anyone that's watching or watching this back on replay, thinking about going into animation, stop motion or model making, what would your advice be to them?
I think, well, they're partly doing it now, actually, by doing things like you put on today, watching interviews and as Freya very bravely done, actually. It's not to put questions out there is a great thing. Come along to these kind of events and ask professionals and get their opinion, because I would kill for this when I was a child, or well into my teens, even as a student. There wasn't much opportunity to actually get to meet people who are actually working in the field. So I think by coming along and doing this, by taking part in this, you're already on a good first step, I think. But again, it's just playing. Just if you really enjoy it, do more of it, and push yourself. Lots of YouTube videos out there on making things. Learn new skills. As a model maker, one day I might be a ceramicist. The next day I might be working on CNC lathes, making armature bits, or silver soldering like a jeweler. I might be doing some graphics to make a newspaper, or do some graphic design to make a little comedy newspaper with headlines, little jokes in there. I might be doing a bit of flower arranging or topiary to make bushes and hedges. I might be knitting cocktail sticks to make a balaclava for a chicken. So you're picking up lots of skills. So learn as many skills as you can along the way, and then it will stand you in good stead. And if you want to be an animator, look at actors. Actors are essentially, animators are essentially actors. They're just hiding behind a little doll, and they're performing through that. So look at acting classes, and you will be forced as an animator to get up and do what we call a live action video test. So you'll have to act out what your puppet's going to do and work out if they can do that performance in 10 seconds or 5 seconds. And then you'll have that little video playing on your screen as reference. So be brave, I think, really, is the short answer.
Awesome. Another question from Freya. She wants to know how long it took you to make the giant wow.
The giant wow took me about 3 weeks. So we make a big sculpt, and then we had to make a fiberglass gel to keep it really nice and light, and then skin it in a lot of plasticine. And I do have scars on my arm from an exploding bain-marie of plasticine, where I accidentally boiled it dry, and then it sent a giant explosion of molten plasticine through the air up my arm. So I had to have it was lucky enough not to have a skin cut, but I do have a scar up my arm here from molten plasticine. So yeah, that was quite an effort. So all in all, it was about a month to make the whale and the mouth replacements, and then the big animated tongue that folded out with a little tiny fish that sat on it. With as well. Yeah.
Yeah. As soon as you said the tongue rolling out, that's the bit that triggered it. I remember that now. Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Well, that were all my questions. I know, Jim, you're going to show us something visually as well. So if anyone's watching and thinks of anything as Jim is talking, please pop it in the comments box. Don't miss the opportunity to ask questions in real time. I know I would have loved this opportunity as a young creative person as well. So let's make the most of it. But if you want to share your screen with us, Jim, and show us your presentation.
Now, when I'm sharing, I won't be able to see anything but the presentation that I'm showing you. So do feel free to shout any questions out that people have got. So we're going to show you a little presentation, PowerPoint presentation about Shaun the Sheep, actually. So about the processes that we go through in making that. There aren't any videos, it's just all still, so it should be nice and simple. And we'll see how we get on. And I apologise for the background noise of the washing machine. The glamour of working in the kitchen. Here we go. And share. Here we go. And I'm going to cut to, here we go. I'm going to play the small presentation. Hopefully you can all see that. Lovely. So Shaun the Sheep, I've worked on this for about 10 or 12 years on and off. starting a little bit in the first series, and I've run several series and helped out on Shaun the Movie and little bits of Farm Again. So all started back on Close Shave, so all the way back in time, and 6 minutes of screen time led to all sorts of merchandise. And since then, we've made 350 episodes of Shaun, 2 feature films, 2 or 3 half-hour specials. Just loads and loads of content has all been built from that little piece of history, and it's one of our most successful characters. And obviously a spin-off of Wallace and Gromit as well. And good characters need good stories, so it all starts with a storyboard artist. And this is my good friend Sylvie, and she is drawing a series of sequences with Shaun and with Bitzer. And you're essentially, as a storyboard artist, you're essentially a co-director. You're working with a director to create the first pass of the movie, really, or the series. So you're drawing all the sequences, and these are into your computer and then made into an animatic, which is essentially a moving storyboard with sounds and everything on it as well. So you're shaping the film, deciding how many sheep are even in that barn, and converting it to the finished product, which is this. And storyboards are immensely useful for people like me as model makers, because it means we can see how many sheep are needed for a set. And we never have just one of each sheep, we have multiple clones, and it can go from being 5 or 6 sheep on a farm to hundreds as well. So just need to make sure we've got all the characters there ready to go, and that needs a lot of planning. So this is a guy called Richard Beak, and he is a production manager, and he plans how far in advance we can develop our stories. So each of those boards in the background is a week in time, and each of the horizontal lines, or the vertical lines, sorry, is a set. And each of the bits of paper is a scene, and each scene will be assigned to an animator. And this can get very complicated. As you can see, this is in our big feature film, Shaun the Sheep studio, and you can see weeks and weeks and weeks in advance of what's going to be planned and what's being done. So this is how we work out all the shots for a film or a series. It means that we can get around as a crew on a Monday morning and see what is needed for the week. Do I need a ball? Do I need some penguins? Do I need some farmers' alarmers? What do I need to make the shots as well? So lots of planning goes in advance, and it's all very analog. So again, I say to people, even if you're not interested in playing with plasticine, there are lots of really cool roles in film that are very essential to make a production work, and that is very much one of them. And Richard Beak started off as a runner, so he started driving vans and picking up clients and buying plasticine and doing all that kind of stuff, to actually running multi-million-pound productions as well. So it can take you a very long way. So this is just to give you a sense of scale. Look, this is the farmhouse, and these 2 of my friends who were just dressing in the pavement and bits of dirt around the carrots, tidying up the tiles in the farmhouse. So the bigger the character, the bigger the sets have to be, and they can get very, very big. So this is one set, and this is a nice small one inside the barn, and the bull is in there, and with Bitzer, and not looking very happy there. But you'll see there are bits of removable roof, so we can add bits more bits of roof on there if we need to, if it's going to be seen on camera, and we can kind of adjust things. And the lights are casting sunshine in through the window or in through the door of the barn there as well. So again, lighting people, very important role, and you can see lots of scaffolding to hold everything together as well. So sets can be quite small, and sets can be quite big. This is a very much younger me, I had red hair. On a larger set, you can see in the background we've got a kind of painted sky, and in front of that with this kind of cut out wooden fields, all done in kind of like pantomime in 2D relief, and then miniature railway trees behind me, and some of the next layers in front of me, and then much larger kind of fake topiary as well. So the art department looks after sets and props, so they create the world in which Shaun the Sheep or Wallace and Gromit or pirates live, and it's my job to make the puppets. And this is one of my old desks, and actually in a very tiny state. So there's a big blue bag of plasticine there, and there are bits of other clay ready to press into molds to make sleeves and heads and beaks and cheeks for different characters. And just a lot goes on. So there's a whole team of us. Anything on from Shaun the Sheep is probably a small team of about 10 to 15 puppet makers, and then there are set producers and all the other team along the way. Up to Pirates, where my friend Kate there is wearing a Pirates t-shirt, and that was 200 or 300 model makers working on shifts to produce puppets. So it can get really, really big along the way.
We've had another question come in, Jim. Are you working on any models or productions at the moment?
At the moment, I'm kind of between projects. So in the studio, we've got Chicken Run 2 is going on, and Nick Parkyn's in the very early stages of doing Wallace and Gromit, writing and storyboarding. So I'm working on some beaver projects at the moment with the national release of beavers across the country, rewilding. I'm working on a beaver education project and a water quality awareness commercial, all environmental films actually, which is rather nice. So, but the studio is very busy with all sorts of things. It's got a secret project that nobody is being allowed to give the name of. It's called the secret project at the moment. So yeah, there's lots going on, and of course we do digital stuff as well. So there's lots of that going on at the same time. So yeah, you might see a new series that's coming out with Armin called Lloyd of the Flies, which is a CG animated series, which is very funny. So you'll keep an eye out for that one.
Okay.
Now, here we have an armature, or the skeleton that goes inside. So do you remember I said about using mills and lathes and engineering? We work with people who have worked for Airbus and Boeing and Rolls-Royce to make aeroplane components. They can come in and make armatures and skeletons that go inside. This one's for Bitzer, but it'll be almost exactly the same for Gromit as well. And you can see there are removable ears and hands. There's sections that we can take out for necks and things as well. So if anything breaks along the way, we can easily replace it as well. So everything's easily off and onable, and there's always these useful notes for everybody so they can have a look at what's inside the puppet before they actually get to animate it. You can see a whole host of clone sheep there, and we have about 150 background sheep. So probably all in all about 200 sheep puppets, and probably about 500 or 600 puppets in all for a Shaun series or feature film as well. And they all have mouth sets. So they all make noises, as sheep do. So they're used on and off. So if Shaun isn't making a noise, then we don't have a mouth. If he does make a noise, then we have these different mouth shapes for bleats. And the big ones are for eating grass and doing those kind of things as well, or sad faces as well. And each character gets one of those. Each puppet gets a set like that. So it's a lot of work to do that. And we have assistant animators who look after the mouth sets. There's someone cleaning up a mouth shape for the farmer, and here's someone doing the same for Bitzer, because the plasticine gets dirty and gets worn out, so it takes a lot of resculpting and reshaping along the way. And that's a good kind of first step as well. In your first steps into being an animator is you prepare the puppet, keep them nice and clean, then you get to do simple bits of animation like background things like balloons floating in the air or something like that, and then you progress through the runs of levels of being an animator, and then you become a senior animator as well. And you often have a little box like this of bits of fluff to add on the puppets, and spare pig arms and sheep blinks and bits of bubbles and things, because things are always shaving and brushing their teeth and doing stuff like that as well. And this is another one to give you a sense of scale. Lighting departments are really important to create mood and create different times of day. So at night, we need an electrician to make little bulbs to light up the barn for storytelling time, and to create moonlight on the field as well. So you can see how big those skies. It's about 2 stories high, that ceiling, so it's a really big old building. This is my friend Rich. He is a rigger, and it's his job to put puppets in their place, make sure they don't fall over, and they're able to perform and do things that you need your puppets to do. So they need to be able to jump or fly through the air or run. He makes the things that hold them in place. And this is Lee. He's one of our assistant directors, and he directs, or animation director, and he directs the animation, briefs the animators for the performance. He's putting a pin in the eye of a sheep there, which might seem rather cruel, but there's a tiny hole in the pupil there, and that just gives you a position for the eye. So it means that that sheep can look into the camera and kind of engage with the audience as well. So there are little holes in there to enable us to do that. So it's a very precise thing, but you can see when you don't see stuff on camera, it's an absolute kind of mess. There are bits of rubbish, Allen keys, there's a sheep just lying on its back there and stuff. So if you don't see it, you can just have those to hand and ready to go when you need to. But it can be a old state off camera. And again, just checking the footage, matching it to the storyboard. So you can see on the bottom of the screen there's a storyboard picture and there's the actual frame. This is Rich Webber, who's an amazing animator and director, creates his own projects as well. He's just making sure that everything looks like the animatic, like the overall director wants it to be as well. some more rigging here as well. Making things run and jump and fly is quite laborious. So we have these ball and socket and joints and winders to hold our sheep in the air. So they're on a conveyor belt. So the conveyor belt's going round. Bitzer is a nightcap pulling levers. There's a sheep in a wig for some reason doing something. And Shaun is jumping off the end of the conveyor belt. So all that going on. And we use these rigs to hold them in place and make them perform. And then we remove that digitally afterwards, as you can see here, cutting out whole bits and pieces. So we'll actually take a frame or a sequence of frames of that action previous, like that, without sheep in it. And then when we put the two together, you can then cut out the top frame with the animation on it and get rid of the bits and rigs. And then it gives you the nice clean shot behind it to make your life a lot easier. And that's done an awful lot on this. It's now cheaper to do that than do it in camera. And again, the editing process, putting all those bits of information and story together to make it make sense, adding the music, adding extra sound effects, really brings the whole thing together and makes it make sense. And if you can see that it's not working, then we need to go literally back to the storyboard and see how we can adapt that and maybe cut a shot or add a shot in to make it make sense as well. But it doesn't stop there. Once you've got your finished product, you need to get it out there on screen and essentially, sell it and do marketing and licensing, take things on the road and stuff as well. So it's quite a big old job. So that is my little presentation of the process of making something like Shaun. So I'm going to stop sharing the screen. And if you've got any questions about Shaun the Sheep or about anything we've been talking about, then now it's a good time. Hopefully you've been storing up amazing questions. I know Freya has been very busy asking questions already, but some of the others might want to do the same as well.
Yeah, I can see we've got one from Lucy. I think she might have started watching halfway through because she's asked, what's your favourite part of the job? What's your least favourite? So rather than us repeat it, Lucy, we're not ignoring you. When you watch it back once Jim's finished, we have answered both those questions. But yeah, I know I need to ask lots of questions on behalf of my sons because they'll never forgive me. Roughly how long does it take you? You've probably been asked this a lot, to create like one episode of Shaun the Sheep from start to finish.
That's a really good question. So each animator is producing between 8 and 10 seconds of animation a day. We have 20 animators. So we're generally shooting. So we'll do lots of shots on the farm, in the sheep dip or in the barn for storytelling times. And we look at 5 or 6 episodes at the same time. So we're working on multiple episodes together. And we'll work out how many shots for episodes 1 to 5 are in the farmhouse, in the kitchen, in the bathroom. And we'll clump all those shots together. But I would say probably on average about 2 weeks. A week to 2 weeks is probably a good guide. Because if you think a 10-minute episode is bookended by the opening sequence, it's Shaun the Sheep, Shaun the Sheep. And if you notice the bits when the farmer opens the kitchen door to go out in the garden and splats Bitzer in the face, there are at least, every series has at least 6 new facial splats and positions for Bitzer. So watch those title sequences because they really are. We put a lot of effort into those. So find lots of versions of that. And then the credits, and the end sequence. That's another minute or so. So the actual 10-minute episode is only 7.5 minutes of story. So you're trying to condense all that action. And remember, over 350 episodes now. How do you make that exciting? And you expand the world. So the latest series, which features new characters. So there's a squirrel, there's a duck, and there's another farmer, a kind of posh farmer called Ben, who's pretty much ripped off Ben Fogle, but we didn't ask him permission. Or I wasn't involved with that series. I do know Ben, actually. He's a friend of mine through festivals. That's another great thing. I'm friends with Ben Fogle. You just expand the universe like that. Try and keep it interesting. But yeah, 7.5 minutes is quite a long time to tell a story, really. Doesn't seem it, but you can do a lot with that time. And we do. We go, really big and adventurous.
Yeah, now that you said it, I feel like when I sit there and watch them with my son, it's obviously him that wants to watch them, not me. Yeah. It feels like longer than 7.5 minutes. It feels like a lot has happened in that time.
In a good way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and the other parts.
Longest 10 minutes of your life.
Got another question, I'm guessing from Freya. Do any of the body parts break during animating?
Absolutely. So that's why we saw that picture of Bitzer's armature. At the arm, the head, always the wrists, and sometimes the feet. things are going to break. So often bits are made of wire, so they wear out quite quickly. So again, we make the ears and things like that easily off and onable. So they have those little square sections, and then you can pull the ears out of the head. You can take the head off. The mouths are cut here, so you can then take the mouth replacements and change those as well. So everything's easily off and onable. And if you're a creature comforts fan, you'll understand the joke with that. But it's to make, because everything wears out. So we have an animal hospital as well, where we take all of our creatures to be repaired and kind of tarted back up to make them look really nice for the next shot. And they have to look identical and look as smart as you can possibly make them.
Awesome. Got another question. This is in reference to the young lady I was telling you about earlier. Paige, they've said, thank you so much. This has been wonderful. Paige also just want to say how much she enjoys your community clay time. You effectively tutored her through lockdown.
That's really lovely. Well, thank you. That's really, really sweet. I had to, if anybody doesn't know what community clay time is, you can find it on my Instagram account. There's some on YouTube. I've never really got around to putting them all on there. But every day, it turned out to be, 6 days a week at one point. We would have a theme each day, and had a goldfish bowl, which is still full of people's suggestions. And somebody would suggest pigs, teacup pigs, or dinosaurs, or vegetables. And the next day or that day, I would then, often on the spot without any prep, make that character or that thing that the people had suggested, and you'd all make alongside me. So I say, today we're going to need yellow plasticine and orange or something, and we'll make a duckling, or Freddie Mercury one day, Grandad's another day, and people would join along for an hour. There were all these makes that you could do within an hour, and we got up to 100 makes in the end. That's quite an achievement, really. So people would just listen in like a radio show and not do anything but just listen to it, because it's quite calming. And lots of people joined in and had this mass of amazing plasticine creations at the end of it. So thank you. Was it Paige you said?
Paige, yeah.
Thank you, Paige. That's really lovely.
She says she's still waiting for an axolotl.
I really want to make an axolotl. Maybe I'll do that. I'm thinking about reviving it, not on the scale that we did previous, but do keep an eye out, because I think a week away in Denmark, and then I'll be back, and I'll try and start it maybe once a week again, and do this again. So yeah.
Oh, we'll keep an eye out. Yeah, definitely. Are those tutorials still available on your Instagram account?
Still on Instagram. You can find it on Instagram TV there in the section. So there's loads and loads in there. And have fun with them. Yeah,
well, I'm thinking for me more than anything else. Cool. I'm just going to ask for one more shout out. If anyone's got any questions, to jump in and say now. I know there's about a minute delay normally with Facebook, but I'd hate for people to miss out on the opportunity. It's been amazing talking to you. I've learned so much, and I went to an art college where a whole floor was dedicated to model making. So I had friends who worked there. So I felt like I knew a lot about model making, but clearly I didn't.
There's always new and exciting things to learn. That's the thing. There's still. I look forward to needle felting, like Robin. There's those things. Learning to needle felt is a really good fun thing. Again, with a very simple wire armature, you can create the most amazing things. And kids of all ages really are creating these really beautiful things that could be turned into films. So there's always something new to learn. You think you've done it, and then you're like, oh no, this might be metal coating, or like I say, some jewelry working, making things like the bling outfit for the pirate captain had nearly £3,000 worth of Swarovski crystal into it. So never worked with Swarovski crystals before. It's just not my thing. But suddenly you're putting several £1,000s worth of those onto an animatable puppet, and that's quite exciting. So yeah.
Yeah, my degree was jewelry making, so that's fascinating. I had no idea. I'm going to have to watch that again now and study that part.
So actually making proper jewelry in miniature for puppets to wear, and not on the level that you would have done, but you were still setting semi-precious stones.
Without scaling it down, that must have been. You must have an awful lot of patience. Lee Jane has asked, "What's your Instagram handle?"
It is very simple. As you can see on the screen, actually, Jim Parkyn, but without the space in it, and I think maybe without the capital P. I can't remember, but the important bit is the Y. There it is. The Y there. It's not iron, and you'll find me And I think I'm wearing this top actually, I think, as well. So it's a nice yellow background of my face. So yeah, you won't miss it.
We'll be able to recognise you. And Lucy's asked, what was your favourite animal that you made?
Or, do you know what? I would like to make the accent for. I'm thinking about that again now. I think, it was probably giant anteater. I think it was definitely one of my favourites. And actually, the beavers that I've been making, I made for Creature Comforts, but I'm making them for this new project. I'm having a lot of fun working with beavers. I'm a beaver believer, and you should be too. They're a great thing to add to the, to Britain again as well. Very exciting.
Yeah. We went on a boat trip recently, and we saw evidence of beavers. So
really, where was that?
The River Stour.
Oh yes.
Yeah, they're definitely there.
Yeah, and it is like a cartoon. You see those kind of wedge-shaped bits of tree, like that with a through. It's like watching a Hanna-Barbera, kind of Tex Avery cartoon. Really, it's they're amazing creatures, and it's a really lovely thing that I get to do. So I'm glad you got to see them. That's nice.
Yeah, I didn't actually get to see the beavers, but plenty of evidence that they were around. Yeah, no denying that. I've got another question. Joe has asked, what's your top piece of advice for anyone interested in the field? Top piece of advice?
Well, obviously, get involved in community playtime is a good thing. And just kind of, there's lots of little courses you can do. Again, really. So, again, it's just practice. Get all the materials, get some plasticine, get it under your fingernails, and just have a go. Just keep practicing and keep exploring. So there isn't a plasticine version of of Lego Masters, but I wish there was, because you could really have fun creating that. So maybe do your own community playtime. Have a box full of suggested animals or something, things, random objects. Vegetables didn't seem like a very interesting subject, but I decided to turn it on its head. So we did potatoes in pants, beetroots in bras, carrots with cravats, and we changed it up and made them into amazing characters. So you can turn something very mundane into something very exciting. So and just build up that portfolio of stuff that you're having experience of making. If you haven't made something with feathers, have a go at making feathers or scales, and just keep doing it, and record it. So when you're making your models, get your phone and set it up and record yourself. Do some time lapse. And you're creating content as well. It's animating for you. You're animating yourself, essentially. And that's quite a cool thing to watch back, to see the process. And people are endlessly fascinated by time-lapse photography. And it's the simplest thing you can do. You're just putting a camera up and you're letting it do its own thing. And I'm all for very simple things like that, because, it looks great. You've done nothing. It's brilliant.
The technology's done the work for you. On that vein, Jill has asked, what are some good free animation apps? Or sorry, Freya's asked that. Are there any that you recommend?
Yeah, well, I think for younger kids, I think probably less so for most people viewing. I think there was one called the Aardman Animator, which is it's got little trophies and stuff. So if you've got younger brothers and sisters, I would encourage them to have a go. That's free, and you get little trophies, and you can add sound on there. The one I use professionally as well is one called Stop Motion Studio. None of them are very imaginatively titled, but you know exactly what you're going to get. It's got a pink, kind of cyan, kind of on a magenta square with a white old film camera in it, and that's free. Or you can pay £5 to have the professional version. That will mean you can do white balance, you can call focus, you can do more time-lapse things, you can do more complex stuff. But I think it's a £5 well spent, actually. So but again, you can do a lot with the free version as well.
Yeah, I would agree. My son has got the stop motion one you just mentioned, and we paid the £5. It's nothing, and he was really self-sufficient on it as well. He started using it when he was about 7, so it's not too complicated, because that would overwhelm me as mum. So
totally, and you can't destroy anything with it. You can't wipe the internet. It's just just filling your phone with amazing films. Then you as a parent have to sit and watch them.
Yes, Lego he was using to do it. Yeah.
A great gateway into learning about timing. So it was all about timing. So everything isn't moving at a very robotic pace, and not everybody. It's very hard to do that now. But not one is moving. One thing's moving very fast, and another one is moving very slowly. So you're changing your pace as well. And when we're running or we start running, we don't go from 0 to 70 miles an hour. On frame 1, we speed up, so make the movements from small and get them bigger and bigger, and grow them in size for accelerating. And when things slow down, go from the bigger movements down again, down and down to really tiny, to have that slow down and speed up and slow down. So again, kind of, it's great because somebody could write stories if they're not interested in making them, and then they could write a story with you. You can make the characters together, you can make costumes, you can make the little sets, and then you can put the film together. So it can be a real team effort as well. And I think, again, I keep saying it, if you're not interested in playing with plasticine, if you like maths, I mean, God bless you, that's amazing. We have a whole team of accountants that work to make a film production. We're a whole team of lawyers who work on these things to using characters, distribution of them with series, advertising, making trailers and things like that. Making live action crews are always working with us to make the making of films. They've got their own budget, and all those little comedy supposed mistakes, they all pay for. So there aren't any comedy outtakes because they just don't happen. If something falls over, it's not actually funny. It's just a frame there and then a frame there. So if anything does go wrong, we've actually engineered it to go wrong. For film, for a comedy thing, that has a little film crew that makes it as well. So there's so many roles. We like cooking, catering for a film is amazing, and you get to do all these things and work with amazing people and dreadful people.
Yeah, but you can't avoid them. They're everywhere. And I imagine also in any of those jobs, if you're on set, you could potentially meet the famous people too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've had, like I said, we've had Hugh Grant and the Bonham Carter come through. Richard E. Grant, and like I say, Eddie Redmayne and Tom Hiddleston, the Mighty Boosh, Terry Gilliam. A lot of younger people as well.
Yeah.
Come through,
I know who you're talking about. Oh, that's been brilliant. I don't think we've got any more questions come through. Lots of people saying thank you so much. It's been so informative, so interesting.
Thank you.
Taken a lot from it as well. So,
well, no, thank you for all your great questions, everyone, and thanks Pip for organising this and actually and hosting it as well, because it's not an easy thing to do, and the logistics we found out just before we started here of using different platforms as well. Again, when you think you've got it sussed, there's a new and exciting platform to use that requires something different. So we're always learning, and you've done a great job.
Oh, thank you. It wouldn't be a Tuesday without a technical hitch, I say. Well, thank you again. Thank you for your time. If anyone did want to reach out to you and get involved with any of the community projects you're in, or just wanted to ask you any more questions, could we tag you in this video once we've edited it afterwards?
Please do. Yeah.
Oh, that'd be amazing. Thank you so much for your time, Jim.
That's okay. Like I say, if you want to find me and you've got questions to ask, or just have a go at Community Playtime, you can find me at Jim Parkyn there, Parkyn, and send me a message.
Lovely. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much.
See you later.